Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Mind Hostage, a show where real people discuss real issues of overcoming negativity and a negative mindset. I'm your host, Stephen Payne, and I'm glad to be here with you today. For any of you listeners in Central Texas, I recommend you visiting Four Legs of Love Boarding and Boutique, located in Temple, Texas. You want to pamper your furry friends, a good doggy daycare, or even in-home care, or you want to pamper them with a CBD infused spa bath, these are the folks for you. They also offer a variety of dog beds, accessories, treats, and much more. Visit these guys at gopetlove.com. That's gopetlov.com, or you can contact them at 254-239-5307. That's Four Legs of Love Boarding and Boutique. These guys will treat your pets like their family. Hello, and thanks for tuning in, Mind Hostage fans. We're going to have a great show for you today. We're going to welcome my wife, Trish Payne, to the show today. She's going to talk about her adversity as a identical twin. Trish, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Trish, I kind of let the cat out of the bag. You're going to talk about being an identical twin. And so, I just want to start by talking about what that was like growing up. I think I remember maybe a set of twins at the school I went to, but I didn't know them. I just know that, everybody would freak out by looking at them. And they, I think, were pretty close to identical because none of us could tell them apart. What was life like for you as an identical twin growing up?
We had a lot of fun, me and my twin sister. We did everything together. We were best friends to each other. There was nothing that one of us did that the other one didn't know about. We didn't have any secrets whatsoever. It was a 100% bond between the two of us.
So you didn't have secrets with each other, but I bet between the two of you, you had secrets from other people. Kind of those secrets did you play on other people? Did you go into school and class and that? Or did you play tricks on other kids, or what was that like?
We did. We had our very close friends, the older we got, that could tell us apart. And we had our close friends that could kind of tell us apart. And we had sometimes, our mom and dad could tell us apart, and our brothers and sisters. And then, there was the group of friends that couldn't tell us apart, or kids, that couldn't tell us apart. So we did things that other people didn't know that we did, switching classes or going out on dates, or just all kinds of just different things. I mean, it was always an adventure. That was the thing. My life with her, it was always an adventure.
That was pretty interesting that you would switch dates on that. What was that like? Did you ever let on?
Well, we could never tell if the boys knew. And, sometimes they would say that they did. We switched dates quite a bit. And some of the boys knew and some of them didn't. So it was all in fun. We ended up telling them at the end of the date or in the middle of the date, whichever. And everybody got a kick out of it.
They probably didn't care. They were just glad to be on a date with some hot chicks, huh? So growing up, then at school, you switching classes and that. And tell me about the bond that you guys had, just within your own family. I mean, I know you had a bunch of other siblings, male and female. Did you guys have a different kind of a relationship in your family than others?
Well, I had two older brothers, two three older sisters, and then me and my twin sister, we were the youngest. I was the baby. She was 13 minutes older than me. And yeah, our bond, I didn't realize it was different until I got much, much older. I could think something and she would say it, or she would be thinking something and I would say it. And we always used to finish each other's conversation or sentences, all kinds of things. And sometimes we would kind of say to each other, get out of my head and laugh because we knew what the other one was thinking. Or, she would call or I would call her just if something was amiss, something off, or something wrong.
How about emotionally? I know it sounds like you finished each other's sentences and kind of knew what you were thinking, but how about if one of you got in trouble or something, the other one kind of feel it?
If one of us was getting in trouble, then we were both getting in trouble. We
No.
were not. We always had each other's back. So if she got in trouble for something, then I did it too. If I was getting in trouble for something, she was like, well, I did it too. So we would both get spanked, or whatever. Our emotions, right around the time that we were 19, we went and saw a specialist up in Chicago, Illinois, a doctor who specialized in twins, and he had written several books about twins. And we went to him because we couldn't figure out to explain to us why I could be thinking something and she would say it, or vice versa. Or like I was involved in a car accident with my older sister, and my twin sister Carrie was in a different town about an hour or so away from where I was at. When I was with my older sister, a car T-boned us and it left me unconscious. Well, during that time of the accident, my twin sister, she called my mom, wanted to know where I was at, what had happened, what was wrong, was I okay? And of course, my mom at that time, was just like, everything's fine. She's with, Jeanette. But Carrie still kept insisting that something was wrong. And then, make long story short, that's when my mom and dad found out that I was involved in the car accident, and I was sent to the hospital by ambulance. And there was another incident that I remember very clearly. We were both in the second grade, of course, together. We were in the same class, and they had in that school 2 second grade classrooms. The teacher could not tell us apart, so she had us split. She had me in one class and Carrie in another class. And I think it was me that I got extremely sick, and then Carrie followed suit. And the doctors at the hospital, they ran all kinds of tests. Everything came back negative. So they asked Mom and Dad what had changed, what was different, and Mom told them the only thing that was different was, we were split up at school. So the doctor wrote a prescription for us to be put back in the same classroom together, and then we were okay.
That's amazing that just being separated by a classroom would affect you guys that severely.
Yeah, and I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. I was 18, I was young, and I moved to Colorado with one of my older sisters, and she stayed back in Indiana. And I thought my pregnancy was going great as far as not having morning sickness or anything like that. And then I got a phone call from her. She had left her morning class, and she at that, we didn't have cell phones, so she had called me from her dorm room, I believe it was, or she called me one morning early, and she said that she wanted to know what in the world was going on with me, what was I doing. And I was like, well, what do you mean everything's fine? And she said, I'm sick. I'm sick every morning. I keep wanting to throw up, and I can't keep anything down. So she was experiencing my morning sickness, and whereas on my end I was feeling great. I didn't have any type of morning sickness like that. So she was having all of that.
So it sounds like to me that when in each of these events, at least as far as your morning sickness and your accident, that she was the one that primarily kind of felt what was going on. How does that work with twins?
Well, like I said, I touched on this a little earlier. We had started going to that doctor, and come to find out, telling him about all these different incidents, he described to us, which we never knew this, identical twins or twins in general. There's one that is always a giver and one that is always a receiver.
Of what?
Of emotions, feelings. And I was the giver and she was the receiver. So when he explained that to us, then that explained it. We were still able to both like intercept each other's thoughts, I guess, if that's how you want to say it, like, because she could be thinking something and I would say it. So this was different. This had to do with our emotions, our feelings, things like that. So when I was in the second grade and I got sick because they moved her. No, I take that back. She was the one that got sick. She went in the hospital before I did. And like, she could feel everything that I was going through. When I had my accident, she felt all that. When I was having, my pregnancy, she went through the morning sickness. So I was giving and she was the one receiving.
Okay. Well, there was a day where that kind of switched, where you became the receiver in April 26, 1988. And I'd like for you to talk about that day and kind of how you were a receiver of emotions. You kind of started going through some weird kind of emotions and things that were really hard to put your finger on.
So that morning, April 26th, 1988, I woke up that morning and did my normal thing. It was around 7:30 in the morning that I got a phone call from Carrie. Her car had gone in the shop and she wanted to know about my vehicle. I had already told her a couple weeks ago, before that date, that she could drive my vehicle. So she was driving it here and there. And then she wanted to know where all the paperwork was for my vehicle, in case she ever needed it for whatever reason. And we had our normal conversation, and at the end of our conversation, it ended the same as all of our other conversations that ever ended. I love you, talk to you later. That was our ending of conversations. And we hung up. No sooner than we hung up the phone from each other, I wanted to call her back. And I did. I immediately called her back, and she had already left. And then I called, she was at my mom's and dad's house. She was heading into town, and I called there at her fiance's mom's and dad's house, and she hadn't gotten there yet. Well, his mom said that she hadn't seen her, and I knew from my mom and dad that she was planning on going over there, but they didn't know when. So I kept calling different people around town and calling her fiance's mom and dad's house. And when I finally got a hold of somebody there, she had just left. She was there and then she'd left. And then his mom told me, well, she thought maybe Carrie was going up to Lafayette. So I started calling. I remember even telling people, if you see her, have her call me. And of course, I never got a phone call in that whole entire day. My whole entire mind, thoughts, focus, everything was on her. My emotions were like in a panic, but I didn't know why. I wanted to get a hold of her, but I didn't know why I wanted to get a hold of her. And that went on the whole entire day.
For some of these maybe younger listeners that are listening today, that was really before cell phones and smartphones and that. So you were at the mercy of trying to pin somebody down at their location and using a landline. So I bet that would be pretty frustrating. I remember those days trying to get a hold of somebody and calling, and you just had to catch them at the right time. So I bet that was frustrating. You had these really strong feelings, but you couldn't put your finger on.
Right, and the more the day went by, the more frustrated I was getting. I was saying things off the wall type things to my husband at that time. I was telling him that I was going to die, and I'm going to die tonight, and I just couldn't shake that feeling. And I wanted to get a hold of her. I didn't know what I wanted to say to her. I just wanted to get a hold of her. I wanted to talk to her. I just had this overwhelming urge, this need that I needed to get a hold of her, but I could not figure out why I was having all of these emotions and feelings that I was not familiar with, and I couldn't get a hold of her.
Well, how'd that day progress then? I mean, obviously, if you were trying to get a hold of her all day, as the day ended, did she ever call you back, or what happened?
So the whole entire day, I could not get a hold of her, and around 7:30, I was walking from my living room into my kitchen, and I remember like falling. I had to grab a hold of the wall to stand up. My legs, everything was shaking. I remember going back over, sitting down on the couch, and I remember looking up at the clock for some reason. I don't even know why. And I just remember all this pain shooting through the bottom of my feet, all the way up through my legs, all the way up through my chest and my arms, my hands, up through my neck, up through my head. And then the pain was gone, and I couldn't figure out what the pain was. At the same time that pain was leaving, I felt this overwhelming, like just engulfed feeling of love. I felt like it was just my whole entire body was engulfed in this voice, this inside me was saying everything was okay, but I didn't know anything that was going on, and I still could not put my finger on anything, but all of the panic and everything had left. I felt at peace, and I stood up from the couch, and I remember my husband at that time was either in the living room or the kitchen. I can't remember the exact details of that, but I just remember seeing him as I stood up, and I pronounced to him that I was dead. And it was hard for him because he didn't know, what was going on. Just the whole entire day I was telling him I was going to die, that I wasn't going to be there in the morning. So that was already, starting things. And then for me to stand up, and I said it with authority, I just blurted it out that I was dead, and walked down the hall, and I got in bed and went to sleep.
Wow, that's pretty ominous sounding. So you went to bed, and what happened next?
Around 3 o'clock in the morning, my mom called, and I answered the phone. My mom told me that Carrie had passed away, that she was involved in a car accident. And I yelled at my mom, told my mom, to stop pranking me. And I slammed the phone down on my mom. And then, of course, that woke my ex-husband up at the time, and he was asking me what was going on, and I told him that Mom had just called me, and she was telling me that Carrie was involved in a car accident and that she was killed. I said that Mom was pranking me. Well, about that time, he was out of bed, the light was on in the bedroom, and the phone was ringing, all of this, like, it seemed like at the same time. And I remember sitting on my bed, and like I had gotten myself in the Indian style, like I was in disbelief, but like, was this happening? Was it not happening? And of course my mom called back and told my ex-husband that Carrie was involved in a car accident. So we got in the car, drove back home, 3 hours away.
So that had to have been a pretty long 3 hours then, with all these things going through your head. And had you put two and two together by then about the feelings you had that evening before?
Not yet. My drive home, it was a blur. It was like nonstop crying, and then I'd break, but it was like my brain was not thinking. I wasn't conceiving anything. It was like I couldn't think, and there was times that I had cried so much that I like didn't have any more tears. It was the longest drive I'd ever had, but it was only 3 hours, and it seemed like it was a lifetime.
So about when you got home and that, did you go visit your sister, or what happened next?
When we got home, we went on into the funeral home, and I cannot remember all the details of who all was with me when I went up there. I know mom and dad was. I cannot remember if any of my siblings went. A part of me on the drive home was that she was not dead. I could not comprehend that. So when I got to the funeral home, I wanted to see her body. I wanted to see if it was her. And it was like I saw her body, but yet I still could not conceive that it was her.
So certainly they hadn't had time to prepare the body or anything.
No, they had just gotten it in, and nobody wanted me to see her in that condition, but I insisted. I didn't see any of the brokenness. This may affect some people, I don't know, but the gentleman, the mortician, he was the only one there, and for some reason he had to move her body from one location, from one table to another table, and he was going to get somebody to help, and I remember that I refused to let him get anybody. That I had to do that. I had to move her from one table to the next.
So to give everybody a sense of kind of what you were dealing with, can you tell our listeners a little bit about the car accident?
She was driving. Of course, she was in my car, and she was driving from our hometown to her college, which was about an hour away. She was behind a big box truck, and she hit a dead deer on the road. It was raining real bad, and it caused her vehicle to go airborne. And from the police report, they said that she had just gotten her vehicle straightened up. Once she got her vehicle straightened up and she was just getting ready to move her vehicle from that wrong lane back into her lane, that's when a car came down the hill and they both hit head on, and it killed both drivers, her and the driver from the other vehicle. It killed them both instantly.
Wow.
And it was much later was when I did connect my feelings. I still hadn't figured out my feelings during the day. I remember asking the coroner what time that she passed away, what time did the accident happen. And of course they can't pronounce death on somebody until somebody from medical personnel gets there, views the body, and then pronounces. So from the time that happened till the time that it was pronounced, I don't know what time that was. I can only go with the time of when I was feeling things. And I feel that during the time that I was walking from my living room to the dining room to my kitchen area, when I almost fell, was when it hit that deer. And because the fear, what I felt the anxiety, the fear, the unknown. Like I had to grab myself to get myself straightened. I got myself straightened, and she got her car straightened. And then I sat down on that couch, and that's when I felt her pain. I honestly do not believe that she felt that pain. That and that was what I felt. I felt it instead of her feeling it. At that time in my living room, I didn't know what was going on. What had happened.
That's a kind of a connection that I don't think most people can even conceive, to be honest with you. That's just an amazing kind of next level connection. Do you feel like when that happened that you lost a piece of yourself?
Yeah. Of course, at that time, I did not realize what was going on. I just felt that there was something different about me. At that time that accident was going on, something was different. Something had changed.
Kind of like an emptiness, maybe, or something?
An emptiness and a sense of, she was the one that always guided things, and her mind was on track. Like her telling me, Trish, you need to do this, this, and this. So I lost all of that.
A sense of disconnect?
Yeah, the disconnect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you guys, went through the funeral in that. For our listeners, some may have suffered loss and have an understanding of the grieving process, and although it's different for everyone, there are some pretty similar steps and things in common with grief. First is kind of denial. Sounds like you went through that. Did seeing her there, touching her, help alleviate that at all for you?
When I was definitely going through the denial when I was at the funeral home. My older sister, she was a beautician, so she did her hair, and I wanted to do her makeup, and so I was doing her makeup, and the whole time, even whenever her body had to be moved and stuff, the whole entire time that I'm standing over her, I did not see her. That was not my sister. I did not want to believe that was her. And it wasn't until we were actually at the funeral. Well, it was the showing, the first night for family and friends. And when I walked in, and this, I'll tell you how close, we were, and then I'll go back to that as far as our looks. I don't remember a whole lot about the funeral or the showing. Everything was a blur to me. But I remember walking in the first evening for the showing, and I remember hearing this thump, like somebody was falling or somebody had fallen, and it was kids that she had gone to college with that knew her, that had never met me. They had just left her coffin and seeing her, and then walking down the aisle, and they saw me, and they were passing out. Well, I didn't know this until months later, really the whole detail of it, when it, talking to my parents and stuff, them telling me, or different people telling me about different things. And it wasn't until I got up there at the coffin that is when it hit me that was her laying there. My oldest daughter, Honey, she was right around 2 years old, and I can't even remember who was holding her, but she was next to me. I may have been holding her, I don't know. And I just remember Honey saying for me that for mommy to get up, to wake up. She thought I was the one laying there in the coffin, and we had to keep telling honey, no, that's Aunt Carrie's. And then she was like, well, tell Aunt Carrie to wake up, tell Aunt Carrie to wake up. So that's when when it hit home with me that she was there. Oh, a part of my brain was still trying to convince myself that she was still somewhere out there alive.
So another major stage that I think a lot of people go through is guilt. Did you deal with any of that?
I did. I had guilt about her driving my vehicle, that I thought that it was, my fault that she was killed in the car accident because she was driving my car. And I had that guilt for a while, but it was like every time I thought about that, every time that would pop into my head, it was almost like she was screaming at me, telling me no, that it wasn't that it wasn't my fault. And but those were the thoughts that I had for a long time.
Sure, I think that's pretty normal. How about blame? Did you go through any of that blame?
I went through some of the blame at the same time. When I went through that guilt, that was my fault. I went through more denial for years. A lot of this is I've never even talked about. I've never discussed. I never went through counseling. None of that stuff. I followed cars around for a long time, and there was times that I was like in a daze. I remember calling my ex-husband and telling him I didn't even know where I was at. I was out in the middle of nowhere, and I don't even know how I got there. I just would drive looking for following somebody. Sometimes I would follow people, and there would be, I would follow some woman that looked like her, the vehicle, and I, would see the person, and okay, it's not her, and I'd turn around and go back home, or I'd stop myself before that person get to destination and turn around and go back home. I'd catch myself, and then there was times that I was just in a daze, following somebody, and then before I knew it, I was somewhere.
How about anything else? Like, have you ever felt her presence or anything?
I've always felt her presence around me. Always feel that she's always with me. No matter what I do, I feel her with me.
Something that stands out to me that you mentioned a while ago was that when you were feeling those feelings at home before you knew that your sister had been killed, that after the pain had shot through your body, that for a moment you got this overwhelming sense of love and peace. What do you think that was?
Well, of course, at the time, I didn't know what it was. And the older I got and started sorting through all of my feelings, emotions, everything, and here I am 31 years later still sorting through things, but I had always knew that was God's love. I mean, I felt it. I cannot explain. It was this overwhelming warmth that it engulfed my whole entire being, my whole entire of me, and at the same time, this warmth. It wasn't a voice or anything. It was, and I wasn't thinking it. It was just something. This feeling with that overwhelming love that everything was okay, that she was, that I really felt like that she was happy. The word. But I didn't know that night, and I was feeling all that, like what had happened. I still didn't know what had happened.
How about now, looking back on that feeling of peace, and you think that helped you get through it, and even today, just to know that she's in a better place?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, about a year ago, I started going through some changes in my life, and I guess opening my mind and reevaluating things and just being more open in general about life. And I had somebody reach out to me, and I don't know how the person knew that I was a twin sister, and that I had lost my twin sister. And we chatted for a little while. She asked me, how I got through it. Hers was recent, whereas mine was much older. And about a year ago, I didn't have really the right answer. I've never talked about that day of her death. I've never talked about what I went through to anybody and how I got through her death. So at that time, when this young lady had asked me, I didn't really know how to respond at that time.
Well, so wrapping up the show, time's getting short. What advice would you give today that you couldn't give a year ago for somebody who's going through some type of a grief or a loss, whether it was a twin or not?
I think I never had the opportunity 31 years ago to talk to anybody. I had, different doctors that wanted me to talk to them, and I didn't want to talk to any doctor. I wanted to talk to somebody who had actually gone through a loss that could help me to understand the feelings and the emotion that I was having, and I didn't have that. And my advice now is, if you've had any type of loss or if you've had any type of tragedy, it helps to talk about it. I didn't realize how much I had kept in for 31 years, and there was a lot of things that I've missed out on, a lot of things that I've blocked that I wish that I hadn't have blocked. That her.
Well, Trish, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story with our listeners. I really do appreciate you sharing that emotional journey and choosing to share that really for the first time in that depth with our listeners. For you listeners out there that are maybe feeling lost or having a hard time in dealing with your adversity, whether it be that you've lost someone or maybe you're lost, the thing to remember is you're not alone. If you have no hope, then what do you have to live for? You have to find your purpose in life. You have to find your relationship with your Creator. And you have to understand that we're all going to go through adversity. And it's not the adversity that defines you, it's what you do with your adversity, how you grow. If you're not strong enough on your own, and we never are, you need to reach out for a relationship with your creator, reach out to friends and family, reach out to a mental health professional, a doctor, a preacher, reach out to your members of your church. Just know that you're not alone. There are people out there that care about you, and we encourage you to reach out for help. We want to listen to your story. We want to hear from you guys. Please reach out to our show at www.mindhostage.com. You can email us at themindhostage@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your stories. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.